What's going on, everyone? It's Kyler back here at Whitetail Chasing Boys. I'm gonna introduce myself. I'm down here in southern Indiana, and my first ever deer, I was 12 years old. I was hunting out of a blind. I just started shooting a compound. I thought I was the coolest kid around town. It was getting dark outside, and two does walked up on me, and I shot, and this one was a Bambi. He still had his spots on him and everything. I shot him, spine shot at him, but I dropped him, and then the mama walked out, and I tried to shoot it, and I was so worked up about this other one that I missed him. Well, leading up to this hunt, we had a black doe that was showing up on camera every single day about this time, and my brother-in-law, he actually helped me get me on this deer. We hunted over there countless days. It's a private property down there in southern Indiana, and we were slaying them. First day he ever hunted in Indiana, he killed one out of my property. And actually, I may be getting an interview with him to explain some things. But we named her Black Mamba, and she had a baby. And she came out that night, and I couldn't see the spots. And honestly, it was my first deer, so I really didn't care. I think my favorite hunt of all was a couple weeks after that. I think I ended up doing something to my shoulder, and I was using a crossbow at the time, and I ended up shooting my first buck. It was a little 3-pointer, but he had a huge body. Just leading up to that moment, just sitting out there all day, not seeing nothing, and it was the coolest thing ever, because I started ranging my shots, and I was like, there was a little thicket, little brush pile sitting over there, and I was like, that's where he's gonna come out. And sure enough, 45 to an hour later, he walked out there and made his shot, or made his spot there, and I laid one down on him. I ended up dropping that deer. I put 2 arrows in him, and then the day after was opening day at gun season, and probably one of the biggest bucks that I've ever seen on that property showed up that next morning, right at my stand too. My biggest buck is this one. Here. This is my biggest buck here. He's a nice basket rack here. He's an 8-pointer. He's, I don't know, maybe a 100-inch deer, if that. Well, the story behind this guy is it was about 2 days before Thanksgiving 2022. It was rifle season. It was rifle season. It was the second day of the rifle season, actually. And it's private property butted up with public. And I went out there and I hunted it. I was sitting on the edge of the field, kind of. I was probably about 80 yards from it. And my stepdad called me. I went with him. He's a real good guy. And he said, "Hey, there's a buck on your way." And, I seen him poke his head out on the field, and I was using my 243 at the time. And he came out. He was trotting along. It was rut, pre-rut, actually. And at first I wasn't going to shoot him because just think this, from 90 yards away, looked like this. And I really wasn't going to shoot him. And I took my chance on him. And he came out, there's a big thicket line right through here. He came out, and I'm sitting, corner to him. And I got him to stop because he was trotting. He was chasing a doe on this field. And I got him to come out, got him to stop, and he seen me. And I took my orange hat off, put it behind me, and he seen me do some movement where he took off again. And I ended up stopping him, and I had the crosshairs on his on his shoulders there. And well, I went to go pull the trigger, and he started moving. Well, at this point, he was facing straight at me, so I was like, well, the only thing I know what to do is to shoot him, dead center of that chest. Well, I shot this deer, and he done a backflip. Actually, he ended up landing on top of his antlers like this, and he was kicking around, and I think this antlers is what saved me from him running, because they were so far in the mud in that field that he couldn't go nowhere. That's my biggest deer. What got me started? So I was probably 8-9 years old, and well, my stepdad would bring all these deer home. My grandfather, he was a big-time hunter down here in southern Indiana, and I've seen a lot of pictures of his deer, and I've always wanted to go. And then one day I gave him, my stepdad wasn't even going to let me go because he was like, "Oh, well, you ain't going to be able to keep quiet, Well, I forced him, I was like, well, what I'll do is I'll see what time he's going to get up. I'll get up 15 minutes early. At this point, it was probably a 20-degree day, and I bundled up the best I could. I didn't have overhauls. I think I wore like 4 pairs of sweats, like 3 or 4 hoodies, a couple pairs of gloves, and we went out, and we didn't see nothing. I was like, this is stupid. I was like, I'm not going to come out here, freeze my butt off every single day and not see nothing, So we ended up not seeing anything that day, and I had my mindset that I was never going to go back hunting. Well, about a month into the season, he brought a nice buck home, and I told him, I was like, let me go out there. Well, I didn't have my license or nothing. He was like, well, here's what we'll do. He said, we'll go out to your uncle's, put you in a tree stand, no gun, no nothing, you're going to sit out there. We got out there at like 5:30 in the morning, set until dark. That was probably one of the roughest things I've ever done. And he told me, he said, well, how'd you hold up? I said, well, it was rough, but I made it happen. He said, that was your test. He said, if you handled that, you can become a hunter. Well, we got my apprentice license them next 3 years, and then I think when I turned 13, I went and got I took my hunter education course and took it, and just ever since then, I've just been, ride or die for hunting. I've went to Kentucky a couple times with my brother-in-law, seen some really nice deer down there, done a lot of hunting down there, and I've just been I just fell in love with it. And from just learning the ways of the deer, getting to learn their patterns, just learning everything from them. I mean, it is great. I mean, from, if I would have let this deer pass this year, that year, he would have been a nice 10-pointer at least, maybe a 120-inch deer. But it was one of those things that, man, I seen that deer and I wanted him. And I've passed a lot of nice bucks up, in these past couple years, and I can't seem to find one that's bigger than this, and I've seen really good ones. I've seen the 12-pointer this past year. I mean, he was probably double size of this, but I couldn't get him to come in. I couldn't get the deer pattern, and that was my fault. I started in that property 2 weeks before rut. It was one of those things that just sucked. I did have a nice encounter this past year. It was a wide 6, and I got up in my tree climber. My bow was on the ground, and I start hear something walking. I look over to my right, and there's a buck, walking his way down. And I hurried up, got my bow up after I lost track of him. I try to rattle him in, and just things don't work out all the time. I've had a lot of great hunts. My uncle, I rattled in probably one of the biggest deer of our life that we've ever seen in one of his properties, and it was actually with my grandfather's first deer. He gave me his set of antlers, and I've used them ever since. So, but yeah, that's a little bit about me. I'll get some more interviews set up, and we'll see how it goes from there. You guys have a good one.